Let's be honest, some of the hardest lessons we learn don't come from strangers. They come from the people we let the closest, the ones we trusted, the ones we tried to please, the ones we kept saying yes to when everything in us was screaming no. And over time, you start to notice the pattern. You feel drained, overwhelmed, pulled in 100 directions, but never really at peace. You're doing everything right, or so it seems, and yet something's off. Something's missing. That something is you. Because when you're constantly pouring into everyone else, constantly keeping the peace, constantly making yourself available, helpful, agreeable, you lose sight of who you are without all the noise. You forget what it feels like to protect your space, to choose your own well-being, to say enough. And the truth is, not everyone should have access to you, especially not the ones who consistently ask for things that chip away at your sense of self. So if you've ever felt guilty for pulling back, if you've ever been called rude for having boundaries, if you've ever wondered why peace feels so far away even when you're being the bigger person, this message is for you. Let's talk about the people you need to stay away from, the ones who keep asking for these 5 things. And more importantly, let's talk about how to take your power back. We talk a lot about time management, productivity hacks, and setting goals, but not enough about energy. Energy is what fuels everything: your decisions, your reactions, your focus, your relationships, your creativity. And unlike money, once it's gone for the day, you can't just earn more on demand. That makes it one of the most valuable resources you have, and yet, most people give it away without realizing its cost. You've probably noticed how some people leave you feeling recharged, inspired, and seen. Others leave you feeling drained, irritated, or small. That's not random. It's transactional. It's energetic math. Certain people are emotional overdrafts. They come into your life not looking to contribute, but to collect. And they do it in ways that seem harmless at first: little favors, frequent venting, endless demands for your attention, your sympathy, your approval. But over time, it starts to wear you down. You find yourself tired, more anxious, less focused, and with no clear idea why. That's not just fatigue. That's someone siphoning your energy without permission. We're conditioned to think that being available, helpful, or endlessly understanding is the price of being a good person. But there's a fine line between being supportive and being used. When someone constantly takes from you without reciprocation, you're not in a relationship, you're in a transaction, and the product is your peace. The tricky part is that it rarely starts off feeling toxic. It might even feel flattering at first. They come to you because you're such a good listener, because you always know what to say, because you're the only one who gets it. But over time, the pattern reveals itself. They only call when they need something. They only check in to unload. They only compliment you when they want access. They frame their constant needs as connection. But it's not connection if it only flows one way. That's not love. That's dependency disguised as closeness. There are people who will make you feel guilty for protecting your energy. They'll call you distant, selfish, cold, or even disloyal. But the truth is, they're not upset because you've changed. They're upset because you stopped making yourself constantly available to be drained. Because when you start setting boundaries, the people who benefited from your lack of them will take it personally. And they'll try to pull you back in, not because they care about your well-being, but because they miss what they used to get from you. Your time, your care, your emotional labor, your listening ear, your willingness to drop everything and fix their chaos. They miss the free access. That's when you have to remember your energy isn't free. It costs you something every time you say yes to someone who doesn't value it. It costs you your focus on the things that actually matter to you. It costs you peace of mind. It costs you rest. It costs you progress. And often it costs you your sense of self. The people you surround yourself with are either investments or expenses. You feel the difference. Investments challenge you, support you, pour back into you. They bring clarity, not confusion. Security, not pressure. You walk away from them feeling more yourself, not less. Expenses, on the other hand, leave you wondering if you're doing enough, being enough, giving enough. They leave you second, guessing your boundaries and questioning your worth. And the longer you stay around those who constantly withdraw from you, the less you have left for the things that actually move your life forward, your growth, your purpose, your health, your own peace. You end up depleted, reactive, tired but unable to rest, because you've spent the day managing everyone else's emotions, solving problems that weren't yours, and saying yes when your body was begging you to say no. You can't build a future if you're running on fumes. And you can't keep blaming burnout on being busy when it's really about being energetically bankrupt from relationships that only take. There's no glory in being everything for everyone. There's only resentment, fatigue, and loss of self. Your job is not to be available to every person who thinks they're entitled to you. Your job is to protect your energy so you can show up fully, on purpose, with clarity. For the things and people that actually matter, it's easy to get caught up in words, what people say, how they present themselves, the stories they tell about who they are and what they value. But the truth is, what someone asks of you speaks louder than anything they claim. Their expectations reveal their view of you, your role in their life, your worth to them, and the limits they believe they can push. When someone constantly expects you to be available, to drop everything, to absorb their pain, to carry their load, they're not seeing you as a person. They're seeing you as a function, as a tool, as a utility. And that isn't a compliment, even if it comes dressed up in sweet words. Just because someone calls you strong doesn't mean they respect your limits. Just because they say, "You're the only one I can count on," doesn't mean they see your value. They may just see your usefulness. What people feel entitled to ask of you says everything. If they expect unlimited forgiveness without change, it means they don't respect your hurt. If they expect constant emotional labor, it means they don't care about your capacity. If they expect silence in the face of disrespect, it means they don't think your voice matters. You don't need to analyze their words when their behavior and demands are already speaking clearly. And yet, so many people ignore those signs. They rationalize it. They're just going through a hard time. They didn't mean it like that. They don't know better. Maybe. But that doesn't change what's being revealed. Someone's expectations of you don't exist in a vacuum. They come from a belief system, a belief about who they are and what they deserve, a belief about who you are and what you're supposed to tolerate. That's not accidental. That's not harmless. And this is where boundaries come in, not as punishment, not as walls, but as clarity. Boundaries aren't about pushing people away. They're about holding yourself together. They're a way of saying, I know my limits and I honor them. When you draw a line, you're not being cruel. You're simply choosing not to abandon yourself for the comfort of someone else. And if someone reacts with anger, guilt tripping, or passive aggression, when you do that, pay attention. That's not love. That's entitlement throwing a tantrum. There's a pattern people don't want to admit. The ones who take the most from you are often the first to call you selfish when you stop. The moment you introduce a boundary, their mask slips, the flattery fades, the gratitude evaporates, and suddenly you're the problem. But you're not the problem. You're just finally holding them accountable for what they've expected of you all along. It's easy to think that love means sacrifice. That support means saying yes, no matter the cost. That kindness means being endlessly available. But if your kindness is always expected, it stops being kindness. It becomes obligation. And when people treat your boundaries like betrayal, they're revealing they never saw you as a whole person to begin with, just a role to play, a need to fill, a giver to keep on call. You teach people how to treat you not just by what you allow, but by what you reinforce. If you constantly reward unreasonable expectations with silence or compliance, you're not keeping the peace, you're just delaying the fallout. And every time you abandon your needs to meet someone else's demands, you reinforce their view of you, someone who will bend, someone who will break, someone who will never say, "That's too much." But here's the truth. They already showed you who they were, in what they expected, in what they demanded, in what they took for granted. The real question is, what are you going to show them now? Every time you say yes, you're spending something, your time, your energy, your attention, your presence. It may not feel like a transaction in the moment, but it always costs you something. And what makes this tricky is that most of us have been taught that saying yes is the polite thing to do, the kind thing, the mature thing. But what no one really tells you is that saying yes too often to too many people for the wrong reasons will wreck your peace and strip you of your identity. Saying yes to everyone is not generosity, it's erosion. Little by little, you give away pieces of yourself. You overextend. You agree to things you don't want. You commit to things you don't have the capacity for. You say, sure, when you mean, not right now, and I got it, when you're already drowning. You convince yourself it's just for now, that it's just easier to go along. But over time, those small yeses pile up, and what they leave behind is resentment. The wrong people know exactly how to use that. They'll frame their request as something small, reasonable, even flattering. You're so good at this. Could you just help me real quick? You're always so available. I knew you'd come through. And just like that, your strengths become the hook. Your kindness becomes a trap. Your reliability becomes their crutch. You get known as the dependable one, the strong one, the helper. And it sounds like praise until you realize that what they're really saying is, you're the one I'll keep asking because I know you won't say no. But your value doesn't come from being constantly available. It doesn't come from being the most accommodating. You don't owe everyone access just because they ask. Your time is not public property. Your skills are not community resources. Your emotional labor is not free. And if you treat it like it is, people will treat you the same way. Saying yes should be a conscious decision, not a knee-jerk reaction, not a fear of disappointing someone, not a strategy to keep the peace, not a way to feel needed or liked or validated. Because when your yes becomes automatic, it loses meaning and you lose control. You end up living on everyone else's terms, their deadlines, their emergencies, their needs, and eventually you'll wake up in a life that doesn't even feel like yours, just a collection of obligations you didn't choose, driven by guilt, fear, or habit. And here's the truth. Not everyone deserves your yes. Not everyone earns your trust. Not everyone is entitled to your help. That doesn't make you selfish. That makes you wise, selective, intentional. That's what maturity looks like. Learning to say yes with discernment and no with confidence. Because every yes is a promise. And if you keep breaking promises to yourself just to keep them for others, you'll lose sight of your own needs, your own goals, your own peace. The most powerful thing you can do sometimes is pause. Not every ask deserves an immediate answer. Let me think about it is a boundary. Not right now is a full sentence. No is not rude, it's responsible. You don't need a reason to protect your bandwidth. You don't need to explain why your plate is full. And you definitely don't need to apologize for not stretching yourself thin to accommodate someone else's comfort. Because when you finally start guarding your yes, really guarding it, you start showing up where you want to be, not just where you feel obligated to be. You stop performing and start living. You stop proving and start choosing. And the people who truly respect you, they won't flinch at your boundaries. They'll appreciate your honesty. They'll be grateful for the yeses you give because you meant them, not because you were guilted into them. Your yes holds weight. Use it like it matters because it does. It rarely walks in the front door with red flags waving. It shows up looking like kindness, wrapped in charm, dripping with compliments. It sounds like, I'm just looking out for you, or I only want what's best. But underneath the surface, there's a current pulling you in, and it's not flowing toward trust, respect, or partnership. It's flowing toward control. The truth is, some people don't want connection. They want leverage. They don't want your partnership. They want your compliance. And they've learned that the easiest way to get it isn't through pressure, it's through favor. Through little asks, little trades, little harmless gestures that seem like no big deal at first. It starts with a small request, something they frame as mutual, something you feel bad turning down. Maybe they want your opinion. Maybe they need just a little help. Maybe they need a favor, just this once. And sure, you help. You say yes. You give them your time, your energy, your support, because that's what kind people do. You don't want to seem selfish. You don't want to create tension. You assume they do the same for you. But that first favor is just the down payment. The real cost comes later, because now there's an unspoken agreement. You said yes once, so they expect it again. And if you say no the next time, it won't go unnoticed. You'll feel the change, the shift in tone, the guilt trip, the subtle accusation. After everything I've done for you, suddenly, the help you gave becomes a tool they use to pressure you. They'll bring up your past kindness like a receipt they plan to cash in, like you owe them. That's how it works. Manipulation uses your values against you, your loyalty, your compassion, your need to be seen as good. And if you're not careful, you'll find yourself doing things not because you want to, but because you feel like you have to, because they made it seem like you're being unreasonable if you don't. And that's not partnership. That's a power play. You'll know you're in that dynamic when you start second guessing yourself. When your now feels like a betrayal. When helping them starts to feel like losing yourself. When their favor leaves you feeling cornered, not cared for. The hardest part, it won't always look malicious. Some manipulators don't even know they're manipulating. They've just always gotten their way by leaning on guilt, shame, and emotional pressure. They've trained themselves to ask in a way that sounds loving but lands like a trap. And if you don't pause and examine the pattern, you'll keep playing the role they wrote for you while telling yourself it's your choice. But here's the key: real love doesn't demand compliance. Real support doesn't require silence. Real friendship doesn't feel like debt. If you can't say no without backlash, you were never free in the first place. If the dynamic changes the moment you set a boundary, the connection was never real. It was a contract, and it was written to benefit one person. Sometimes manipulation sounds like concern. I just don't want you to make a mistake. Sometimes it sounds like flattery. You're the only one I can count on. Sometimes it's framed as obligation. After all I've done for you. But no matter how it's packaged, the result is the same. Your choices are no longer your own. Watch for the patterns. The people who only reach out when they need something. The ones who praise you when you say yes and punish you when you say no. The ones who give selectively, just enough to make you feel indebted. The ones who make their help seem like a gift only to use it as leverage later. Not all help is helpful. Some is strategic. Some is controlling. Some is designed to bind you, not build you. And once you see it clearly, you'll realize the favor was never the point. Control was. It's easy to confuse harmony with agreement. To believe that keeping others happy, avoiding conflict, and saying yes is the path to peace. But the peace that comes from people pleasing is fragile because it's not really peace at all. It's quiet at the expense of your well-being. It's calm built on self-abandonment. It only lasts as long as you continue to sacrifice your own needs for someone else's comfort. Real peace doesn't come from keeping everyone else satisfied. It comes from being able to live with yourself, knowing you're aligned with your values, honoring your limits, and protecting the energy you need to show up fully in your own life. And the only way to do that consistently, boundaries. Boundaries are the lines that protect your peace from the people who think they're entitled to it. They're not about rejection. They're about protection of your mental clarity, emotional energy, and time. And here's the part people often miss. If someone's always testing your limits, pushing past your no, finding ways around your requests, they're not in a relationship with you. They're managing a transaction, one where they get what they want, and you get silence in return. No conflict, no anger, no fallout until the resentment builds and you realize you're exhausted just from maintaining the illusion. Because people-pleasing is a performance. It's acting like everything's fine when it's not. It's smiling through the discomfort. It's taking on more than you should, agreeing to things you don't have capacity for, letting things slide that actually hurt. And the applause you get for it, it's temporary. The praise fades, but the consequences stay. The burnout, the bitterness, the slow loss of self. When you keep peace by pleasing others, you start to disappear. Not all at once, but little by little. You stop voicing your needs. You start questioning your instincts. You prioritize other people's emotions over your own reality. And eventually you become so used to giving that you forget how to ask for anything. You call it love, loyalty, even strength. But really, it's fear. Fear of disappointing others. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of what will happen when you finally stop performing. But here's the thing. Peace that requires your silence is not peace. It's suppression. If someone truly cares about you, they won't need you to shrink to keep the relationship alive. They won't see your boundaries as betrayal. They won't punish you for protecting your space. And if they do, that's the loudest sign you need to listen to. It takes strength to start setting boundaries where there were none. You'll feel the resistance. You'll get pushback from people who were benefiting from your lack of them. You may even question whether you're being too harsh, too distant, too cold. But remind yourself, people who respect you will adjust. People who only wanted access will walk away. And that's okay, because what you gain in return is worth far more. Your clarity, your confidence, and your calm. Relationships built on honesty survive boundaries. Relationships built on control don't. And the sooner you stop trying to keep everyone happy, the sooner you realize that peace was never about avoiding conflict. It was about creating alignment between what you feel and what you allow, between what you need and what you accept, between who you are and how you live. Your peace is not up for negotiation, not for convenience, not for guilt, not for approval. It is not something others get to bargain with. It's something you protect fiercely and unapologetically. Not because you're selfish, but because you've finally learned nothing thrives in chaos. Not your dreams, not your relationships, and definitely not your sense of self. Boundaries are the guardrails that keep you from crashing into everyone else's expectations. They're not selfish, they're essential, because peace isn't something others give you. It's something you build one boundary at a time. There's a difference between being kind and being compliant. And the moment you start standing up for yourself, setting boundaries, or walking away from what doesn't serve you, that difference becomes crystal clear to you and to the people who never expected you to draw a line. You see, we've been conditioned, especially those who are empathetic, giving, and emotionally aware, to believe that protecting ourselves somehow makes us cold. That putting ourselves first is selfish. That saying no without an excuse is impolite. So we over-explain. We soften our boundaries with apologies. We allow guilt to drive our decisions. And when we do that long enough, we end up burned out, resentful, and out of touch with our own needs. But maturity changes that. Maturity says, I don't have to ruin myself to be good. I don't have to abandon myself to be liked. I don't have to keep shrinking to keep the peace. At some point, you realize that giving in to pressure, guilt, or manipulation just to keep others comfortable is not noble. It's self-sacrifice. And not the kind that leads to growth. The kind that leads to emotional debt you can't repay. There will always be people who expect you to keep showing up for them, even when it costs you. And the second you don't, the labels will come flying. You've changed. You're so distant now. You've got an attitude. But what they're really saying is, you're no longer easy to use. You're no longer handing out yeses just to keep the peace. You're no longer tolerating behavior that drains you, disrespects you, or disregards you. And that's what's bothering them, not your tone, not your boundaries. The fact that you finally said, no more. Protecting yourself isn't an act of war, it's an act of wisdom. It means you're choosing your peace over someone else's comfort. It means you're not available for emotional manipulation masquerading as loyalty. It means you're no longer participating in dynamics that rely on you being the one who always bends. You can be kind and still say no. You can love people and still not give them unlimited access. You can be compassionate and still remove yourself from environments that are unhealthy. And you can absolutely be warm, grounded, and respectful while also refusing to tolerate being drained. There's nothing rude about refusing to carry what someone else keeps dropping on your shoulders. There's nothing unkind about stepping away from relationships that run on obligation, not mutual respect. And there's nothing wrong with no longer explaining why you need space, time, rest, or distance. You don't owe anyone the version of you that forgets yourself. You don't owe anyone endless availability. You don't have to play the part of the always agreeable one just to avoid being misunderstood, because being misunderstood is temporary, but abandoning yourself, that's a long-term loss. At some point, you'll realize the people who really care about you won't make you choose between being kind and being whole. They won't punish you for protecting yourself. They won't twist your boundaries into character flaws. The ones who love you will understand that saying no isn't rejection, it's respect. And the ones who don't, they were only ever comfortable with your silence. You are allowed to stop participating in relationships that require you to be small to survive. You are allowed to walk away without explaining your every move. You are allowed to put yourself first without apology. Not to hurt others, but to finally stop hurting yourself. You're not rude for refusing to carry what was never yours. You're not wrong for stepping into your power. You're not cruel for deciding to live with clarity instead of guilt. You're simply no longer playing by the rules of people who only liked you when you were easy to manage. And that's not mean, that's growth. So here's the truth. Protecting your energy, your time, your peace, your values, it's not selfish. It's necessary. The people who truly see you, value you, and respect you won't flinch when you set a boundary. They won't punish you for growing. They won't ask you to prove your worth through endless giving, silence, or self-abandonment. Because the right people won't need you to shrink. They'll celebrate when you stand tall. You don't owe anyone unlimited access to your life. You owe yourself the kind of self-respect that says, my well-being matters. My no matters. And not everyone gets a front row seat. Stay away from the ones who make you feel guilty for protecting yourself, who confuse manipulation with love, access with loyalty, and control with care. Your peace is not a gift you hand out, it's a standard you live by. And once you decide to stop pleasing, stop performing, and start protecting yourself, you won't lose the right people. You'll finally make space for them.